आय नमो नमो। गुरुदेवाय नमो नमो। हे परमेश्वर नमो नमो। हे परमेश्वर नमो नमो। गुरुदेवाय नमो नमो। ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वर रूपा। ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वर रूपा। त्रिमूर्ति रूपा नमो नमो। त्रिगुणातीता नमो नमो। चिन्मय रूपा नमो नमो। हे परमेश्वर नमो नमो। गुरुदेवाय नमो नमो। भावातीता भाग्यविधाता। भावातीता भाग्यविधाता। भवभयहरणा नमो नमो। त्रिगुणातीता नमो नमो। आनन्दरूपा नमो नमो। हे परमेश्वर नमो नमो। गुरुदेवाय नमो नमो। ॐ गुरुनाथ जय गुरुनाथ। ॐ गुरुनाथ जय गुरुनाथ। श्री गुरुनाथ सद्गुरुनाथ। शिव गुरुनाथ चिन्मयानन्द। प्रेम स्वरूपा मम गुरुनाथ। ॐ गुरुनाथ जय गुरुनाथ। ॐ गुरुनाथ जय गुरुनाथ। सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्तधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः. The importance of Karma Yoga in the path to liberation is given out by the Lord in the 3rd chapter. The very word yoga means union. Karma yoga means karmana yogam bhavati. Karmana, do through action, how do we unite with the higher self? So, the karma, which is our personal work or work that we take up as our own duty, is the first one. That is why he said Swadharma is very important. And we saw yesterday how Swadharma is determined by the kind of tendencies that one has. And expression of those vasanas in a given field of activity will empty your inner urges, and thereby you become purified in the mind, and therefore such a pure mind is ready for the inner freedom, moksha. On the other hand, if a person is not doing his duties and doing something else, his inner tendencies remaining intact, he may be excelling in some other work. Still, the unexplored or unexhausted inner tendencies will push him to the next birth again. So therefore, here Bhagavan Krishna says that Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushthitat Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Doing somebody else's work, you are only carrying the burden of your tendencies more and more. Now, the next one is, why do we not do our duty? And why do we do something else? What is the cause for us to deviate ourselves from our given field of activity and do something else? What is that which attracts us to do something else? In other words, Arjuna asked this question, why do people commit sin? Why do people do wrong things even though they know that it is wrong? Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichannapi varshneya bhalad iva niyojitaha. due to what that which impels an individual, that a person commits sin, even though he does not want it. Just like the Baladiva Niyojita, as though he is forced to do this. What is that forces an individual to commit a crime? So therefore, as an answer to that, Bhagavan Krishna says, Kamayesha Krodayesha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyena Miha Vairinam. Understand, Arjuna, it is desire which turns itself to become anger, rage, that makes an individual commit sin. This is a great devourer of your energy and mind, and the greatest enemy that is sitting in your own heart. So all of us, we have seen just now 2 classes before what that desire is. Kama is idea of joy in something other than you, and that pushes you to go towards that. So therefore, this kama is an expression of rajas. Rajas means we have 3 qualities in our personality. One is sattva, that is the nature of sattva is knowledge and thinking. Second one is rajas, which is nature of that is activity and agitation. Third one is tamas, which is nature is loathsome and sleepiness, indulgence. Loathsome or laziness and indulgence. These are the qualities all of us possess. But when one supersedes other, we become victim of that particular quality. And most human beings are prompted and pushed by the rajas. And even, in Bhagavad Gita we have explanation how food is also a cause for that. How certain foods cause sattvic qualities, certain things will cause rajasic qualities, certain things cause tamasic qualities, those things. So in general, a person who is rajasic is pushed by his desires. Desire being an idea of or notion of joy in something else. So therefore, a person who is doing a particular duty of his own doesn't have satisfaction in that. He is looking for something else, more joyful. And so more happiness I want. And therefore one goes for something else. And that something else which he wants, he doesn't get. That desire turns its face to become anger. So kama is one side of the coin, anger is the other side of the coin. If this you don't see, the next moment it becomes an anger. So you cannot be angry about something on which you have no desire. Think of it. Can you be angry about something which you are not concerned about? And what you have a desire about, when it doesn't happen or when you don't get it, it turns to become anger. Actually, kama has got many cousins. Kama, and if you don't get it, it becomes krodha, anger. When you get what you want more of it, it's called lobha. When you get whatever you want, you become very arrogant, it's called mada. When you are full of that thought that this is only I want nothing else, it becomes moha. And when you want it and somebody else get it, it becomes matsarya. What does that mean? The desire, when you don't get it, it becomes anger. The desire multiplies, it becomes greed. When the desire is so much occupying your mind, you can't think anything else, it's called delusion. And the desire, what you want to achieve, you don't get it, somebody else get it, it becomes jealous. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. And if you get whatever you want, you become mada, this is arrogant. These are all cousin brothers. So all of them come together. Shad urmayaha, they are called. Urmi means wave. In an ocean, wave, you cannot control it, just comes in such a huge intensity. The same way, when you have kama, one wave of desire, wait for the other ones to follow. They will come. And the immediate one that follows, when you do not get what you want, is krodha. It's called anger. Therefore, Krishna says in the 3rd chapter towards the end, if only you can take care of this inner enemy called desire, in many places he says the same thing. But in the 3rd chapter he specifically says, if you can take care of desire, the inner enemy, you are more or less crossed half the bridge towards your realization. But that's the most difficult thing to overcome, because it resides in you. As I told you, right? Desire. You jumble the word, become reside. It resides in you. Where do they reside? Arjuna would obviously ask, where exactly, what is exactly the residence of this desire? So in the next verse, that is 11, we see, Indriyani mano buddhihi asyadhishtana muchyate etair vimohayatyeshaha jnanamavritya dehinam. You know, the word adhishtan means the support or substrat, very abode. Adhi and sthan. Sthan in Sanskrit means station, place, abode. Like Pakistan, Hindustan, Kazakhstan, these are all sthan, place. So adhishtan, adhi plus sthan become adhishtan. A permanent abode of what? Desire. Asya adhishtanam, asya kamasya. The desire's residence is in these 3 places. Indriyani, manaha, buddhihi. Sense organs, mind and intellect. In the sense organs, it is in the gross form. In the mind, it's a little more subtle form. In the intellect, it is the most subtle form. You will never even know that. So, the nature of indriyas, nature of the sense organs are to go out. Eyes see only outside things. Ears only the sound outside, right? So, all the sense organs are designed to go out only. Paranchikani vidranat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyadinantaratman. In Kathopanishad it says, these sense organs are designed to only look outside. They are called windows of the mind. Not any windows, Microsoft windows, but this is Bhagavan's windows. The Lord has designed these windows. You know, that reminds me of one joke. You know. Once Bill Gates died, sometime he has to die, so he went to Pearl Gate. So there were 2 arrows, heaven and hell. So he was curious. He was supposed to go to the heaven because he has done a good job of aiding the aid, etc. So, no, removal of aid, not aiding, the removal of aid. So he said, let me go and check up what is like hell. He went there and there was such a party was going on. Everybody was dancing, and drinks were being given, and then all of them, a lot of pizza is being served. Nice, soft music is going on. It's a nice place, he said. So then, okay, let me go into the heaven and see what's happening there. There, when he went, all of them were in meditation. Om Namah Shivaya is going on. Everybody is in meditation. Nobody is talking to anybody. It's a solemn speech. So St. Peter asked, okay, you are going to stay here. Oh, this is so boring. This place, what do I do? So I would like to go that side. There, that is hell. No, that's okay, because I'm not used to this place, and I'm used to that kind of thing. No, I just want. But you cannot come back. It doesn't matter. Sure? Yes. The moment he opened the gate and went to the hell, it was such a dark place, and all were lying down, rolling on the ground, crying, lamenting, shouting. They are being taken to a huge vessel full of hot oil. dipped inside like a pakoda. There's and then when they become unconscious, they sprinkle some water and then again you put inside. It was terrible, and he was shocked. Said, but this is not the thing which I saw. When I came to see the hell, there was a party was going on and all. What is that? Saint Peter smiled and said, that is screensaver. Screensaver. It's not real. Anyway, why did you do that? What is that? It came here. Okay, anyway. So, Indriyani, the sense organs are only outgoing. They are windows. They only go out. Because they are designed like that. Paranchikani vidranat swayambhuhu tasmat parang pashyati. They see only outside, na antaratman. They don't see within. So therefore, in Vivek Chudamani there is a place where it is said that every animal is attached to one sense organ. And with that one sense organ, they die. You might have come across that verse, Vivek Chudamani you are studying. It is said that each one of them are like that. The Bhagavan Shankaracharya gives example of each one of them. Panchatvamabuhu, they enter into death finally. Each one of them. Kuranga matanga patanga meena bringanara panchapiranjati kim, he says. One is Kuranga. Kuranga is a deer. Deer is attracted to sound. So when the hunter wants to really hunt that deer, what is he plays a small flute. And the deer, listening to that music, it becomes totally, still. It is enraptured by that sound. And when it is enraptured, it is captured. Rapt attention with which it is listening. So when it is completely still, then hit an arrow and kill it. Kuranga. Matanga. Matanga is what? Elephant. Elephant is attracted to the sense of touch. So if you want to catch the elephant, what they do is that they keep a she elephant on the other side, and in front of it they make a huge pit with covered leaves. And this he elephant, when it sees that she elephant, it tries to go there to have that physical touch of that she elephant. Boom, gone. It's caught. Kuranga Madanga. Then the firefly, or moth. Mouth is only in that fire itself. It is attracted by the sense of light. So it goes to that bright light and goes inside, boom, gone, burned. Patanga. That's why it's called patanga. It just falls inside. Then the fourth one is meena. The taste. So how do you catch a fish? Even though there are so many things, but it is so attracted by the worm that you put inside that, and then it is attracted by that, gone, died. So Kuranga, Madanga, Patanga, Beena, Bringa, that is called the honeybee. Honeybee is attracted by the sense of smell. So it goes to the flower and starts enjoying the flower, that makaranda, and then the flower slowly closes and crushes it and dies. So, Kuranga, Matanga, Patanga, Meena. Each one of them, and Bringa, each one of them attracted by one sense organ, it dies. And Shankaracharya says, Nara Panchapiranchitakim. A human being is attracted by all the five. His death is in every corner. So, very interesting verse there. So, therefore, Indriyani, the sense organs are by nature attracted or getting attracted to the world outside, and that is how the desire expresses continuously in the gross form. A subtle form of the same desire is in the form of the mind. in the form of fanciful thinking. Oh, the joy is there. If I get that, I will be happy. And I enjoy it. We start, building the castles in the air. That's the mind. Mind cannot decide. It can only imagine and only have fancy. That's why the nature of the mind is sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. Constantly moving here, there, here, there, here, there. Never steady. Never in one place. It keeps moving. That's the nature of the mind. And desire makes the movement more faster. The swing is more. That's why if you go to a saree shop, you do not know which one to buy. That fellow keeps on putting things. This is so nice. Oh, you should see this, mom. This lady, you should see this. And he keeps on putting. You will feel like buying all of them. You wanted to buy only one, but end up buying so much. Why? It is on sale. So when it is on sale, everything is sold. So that's the nature of the mind. It cannot decide easily. But the third one is, which is most subtle, is the intellect. Buddhi. Nischayatmika. Buddhi. Buddhi is that which decides. But then on what basis it decides? Based upon its knowledge. If the knowledge is wrong, finished. And when the intellect decides to pursue the desire, you cannot shake that person. He becomes so adamant about that. So therefore, intellect is also equally an abode of desire. So indriyani mano buddhihi asya adhishtanam uchyate. Etaihi, by these, bimohayati, one is getting deluded. Yeshaha kamaha. Kama deludes an individual with these three things. Through sense organs, through the mind, through the intellect. And what do you mean by delusion? Jnanam avritya. It covers the wisdom. It covers your vision. It covers your higher thinking. Dehinam. Dehinam jnanam avritya. Etaihi eshaha vimohayati. It completely deludes an individual. So Arjuna, when a person is totally deluded by this desire, he becomes a sinner. See? So therefore, the greatest enemy which makes you a sinner is your own desire. Understand that? So Arjuna would ask, what should I do now? So it is not there, which Bhagavan Krishna says, Tasmatvam indriyanyado niyamya bharadarshava papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. You should first of all take care of its grossest expression, indriyani. Sense organs you control first. Have a mastery over your senses. That is the only way you can stop desire overtaking you. Because going to the subtlemost is not that easy. Our Gurudev used to give an example to this. There was a big burglar, a dacoit was there, and police could not catch him at all. Slowly they went on digging his activities, and slowly they understood he had three places where he would go. One is his girlfriend's place. Second is his wife. Third is his mother. These are the three places he usually resides. So what they do, they go to the first, to the girlfriend, threaten her. If next time you should inform us when he comes in here next time. If you don't inform and we know that he has come and gone, we will put you in the jail. So then they threaten her and go. Immediately she will call. Never ever come here. I am in danger. So don't come. So that way they take care of that. Then they go to the next, that is his wife's place. Where is your husband? He has not come for many, many days. Next time when he comes, please inform us. And then they will put one sentry somewhere to see whether he is coming there or not. So she will immediately call and say, never come here because you will be in trouble. The third one where they go is to the mother's place. What happened to your son? Where is he? Why? He is a criminal. Do you know that? She knows anyway. But then she would say, oh, no, my son is such a nice person. Next time when he comes, please make sure that you inform us. and they put a monitor there in the house to monitor constantly, 24 hours vigilance. So that fellow would neither can go to his girlfriend's house, nor to his wife, nor to his mother's place. Then he will be easily caught, because then if he doesn't come anywhere else, then he must be in a club somewhere. He will catch him. In the same way, the desire, when you put a sentry on the sense organs, mind and the intellect, it will die itself, because it cannot express in any other form. So therefore, tasmatvam indriyani adau niyamya. Therefore, first take care of the sense organs and do not allow the desire to overwhelm your senses. That's why in our Tattva Bodha and etc., first thing that is given is Shama Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, Shraddha. If you have all these things, Samadhan. The first one is they take care of your mind and the senses, become very aware of how the desires overpower them. So here, Kama is the innermost difficult enemy to face, and you should wage a war against the desire. So that is the end of the 3rd chapter, which is in the 11th verse. And in the next session, next chapter, Bhagavan Krishna starts saying that this knowledge I gave you about the higher self, your Atman, this is not something new I gave it you today. This I gave the knowledge even at the beginning of the universe to Lord Sun. I gave the knowledge to the Sun, which is my first creation. And that Sun, he gave it to the first king called Manu. Manu gave it to the dynasty of the other kings, Ikshvaku. Manu Ikshvagave Abravait. So this way the knowledge has been Evam Parampara Praptam. Imam Rajarshriyo Viduhu. This knowledge has been passed on to one king to another, and that way the knowledge has been passed on till now. But what happens is, when any knowledge is passed on from one generation to another, when one generation, when passing on, does not practice it, it gets contaminated. If I am passing on a knowledge to you, but you do not see me demonstrating that knowledge, you will have a doubt. Is it not? Just like in your own home also. You tell your child, never speak untruth, never speak a lie. Then that time there is a phone rings, and you look at the number that is from your friend. So you tell your son, go and tell him that I am not there. So that boy very, very, very truthful, because whatever you said he has to tell. Takes the phone. Yes, is your dad there? No, he said that he is not there. So when you are telling your child to speak the truth, you should demonstrate that. Similarly, when the kings got this knowledge but they never practiced this, evam parampara praptam imam rajarshriyo viduhu sa kale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. This knowledge become nashta, yoga nashta. Why? Because mahata kalena, due to long course of time, this knowledge has become contaminated. And therefore, it is necessary that I have to come. So in the 4th chapter, it is about Avatar Mahima. Why the Lord has to come every time, for what purpose? So Sri Krishna says, I come again and again because I want to demonstrate this knowledge. As he says in the next verse, we read verse number 12 here. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. For those people who want to live by dharma, which means not becoming tempted by desire. You see, our own dharma of our life, every one of us are in a particular stage of life with certain duties. Most of us don't even know what your duties are. That's the most tragic thing. Do you know what are your duties to be a wife? Do you know? Anybody taught you? How do you know that what are your duties as a wife? How do you know? What are your duties as a parent or a husband or as a teacher? So when you go for a work, in your job description is there, is it not? This is what you should do, this is what you should do, this is your area of work, this is your responsibility, everything is given. But to be a wife, to be a husband, to be a parent, where is that it is described? What is your duty? Is there anywhere? Are you given any training on that? Wife training? Husband training? Is there anything like that? So many people say, no, by the by we learned. But see, at least in the earlier system where many people lived along with you, your aunts and your various cousin sisters and cousin brothers, so many of them, you watch the elders and learn. Okay, these are the things I should do and these are things I should not do. This is how I should treat the people, etc. But nowadays it's all what? The houses are, or the families are so, what do you call? Nuclear family. So, it's simple, small families, and so you will have no ability, experience, or you don't observe anything. So whatever comes, you just do it. But that is not the right thing. So therefore, dharma, what is that which one should do, one should learn. And the second thing is, you should do it irrespective of whether you like it or not. Why don't we do the duty, as I said? Because, first of all, we are not clear what we should do. Second, our desires are opposing this. So we get tempted by the desire, and in the process, we renounce the duties. This is exactly why Krishna says, do not do that. To abide by dharma is itself a great spiritual practice. Dharma paripalan, doing your duty itself is a very important step in your spiritual progress. That is why it is said, for a wife to perform her duties itself is a religious act. She need not even go to the temple or need not do any puja, need not do any one of this. Because through that itself, one can overcome the temptations. Similarly, a man doing his duties in his profession as well as in his family itself is sufficient for him to purify the mind. Only in an advanced stage, one need to go to a temple or meditation and other study, etc. But we don't do our own duties and we want a shortcut to go to any of these religious practices. So some people I have seen, they do puja, etc. 1 hour, 1.5 hour, 2 hours. And when they come out of that puja, they become Rudra avatar. Shouting at his wife and shouting at his children. What puja you have done then? Because puja means Purnatvam Jayate iti puja. You feel the fulfillment. But that is not achieved there. People do all that, go to the temple and all those things, but mind is not pure. What puja is that? Even that pujari there, Pujasya Ari iti puja. He is against the puja. Puja nam Ari. He is not interested in doing the puja. He is looking at who is come, how much money has been put in the plate, and he is interested only in that. So when you are doing puja, see, there is a beautiful statement from Mother Teresa, I remember that. If you can't love the person in front of you, how do you love a person who is not seen by you? God. If you are doing a puja to the Lord, first thing that you should do is make yourself an abode of compassion and love to everybody around you. If not the stranger, at least your own people. Your own husband, your own wife, your own children, your own parents, your own brother, sister, your own neighbor. So do that duty of being a wife, being a husband, being a parent, being a brother, being whatever. So that itself is difficult because our desires will take it away. So here he says, those people who are doing dharma, I protect them. For that I come. And those who are not allowing these people to do their dharma, I kill them, I destroy them, I eliminate them. Just like a gardener who is wanting to protect a particular set of plants, he necessarily takes out the weed, right? Because if they are there, then they cannot grow. By that, he is not angry about the weeds, but they need not be here. They can be anywhere else. They can grow in the forest, but not here. In the same way, when he says, Paritranaya sadhunam, protection of the people who are performing dharma, dushkrutam vinashaya, to destroy those who are dushkrutam, against this. It does not mean he is inimical to those people, but inimical to those actions. You need not be here, you can be somewhere else. So elimination of them does not mean that he himself created everybody, how can he be against them? He is not against them, but he is against his act. So that's what Gurudev would say, sin is not in the mind, or sin is not in the person, sin is in the action. The person is not the sinner. The act is sin. Therefore, punish the sin, not the sinner. The one who does the act of sin is to be told that you should not do this act of sin. But instead, if you punish the person, you will never improve him. So, sadhunam paritranaya, dushkritam vinashaya cha, for both the reasons. Then why do I do that? Dharma samsthapanarthaya, to establish the dharma again in the minds of the people, to demonstrate to others. Dharma samsthapanarthaya, sambhavami, I come again and again, yuge yuge. So my purpose of coming is twofold. One, to protect the good and eliminate those who are against dharma. Second, to establish dharma, for it gets contaminated over a period of time when it is passed on without practice. So therefore I have to come back and again prove that this is not the right thing. Just like when you are using a computer, you are given a CD to put your operating system, etc. Then they will give you a recovery disk. No? In case of the crash, use this. Bhagavan comes as a recovery CD. Because everything goes haywire. Okay, now you put this, finally it will come back again. So Bhagavan says, when things are going wrong, I have to come back. And then re-establish the whole thing. Defragment the whole thing and then re-establish the whole operating system. I have to come. So here he says, my coming is decided by what? Decided by people who are doing the right thing becoming less and less in number, and people who are doing the wrong things become more and more. Then I have to come. So the only way you can make the Lord to come down is may encourage more people to do wrong things. The Bhagavan is forced to come. Come on. You have to now come because more people are doing wrong things. So, his intention is therefore to demonstrate. So, his work is again twofold. One is dharma samsthapana and jnana prachar. Because one will ask, okay, if I do dharma, what is the ultimate gain I get? Because we are very what you call utilitarian conscious. We are always looking for utility. What is the final result of performing dharma? So, final result of performing dharma is you will be eligible for moksha. And for the eligibility to moksha is not only performance of dharma, but it has to be followed by jnanam. Therefore, jnana prachara is the next one. Now, what is this jnanam which one has to have to become free in this world? Remember, I told you yesterday, there are three things. One is freedom of the mind, freedom from the mind, remember, and then freedom in the mind. Freedom of the mind is whatever you want to express in whatever way you want to express. Freedom from the mind is either drug or sleep and other things. But freedom in the mind takes place only when you know how to look at things, how to face your mind, in spite of what it is. Now that is beautifully put in this chapter, this verse following, that is the 13th one. Karmanya karmaya pashyed akarmani cha karmayah sabuddhiman manusyeshu sayukta krishna karma krita. Freedom in the mind is difficult for a person who takes mind to be true. If I take mind to be real, I cannot but participate in what it does. When the mind or the thoughts are considered to be real, which is happening in me, whatever the mind says, be angry thought comes, lusty thought comes, deluded thought comes, jealous comes, greed comes. So I take all these thoughts to be real, then obviously I would follow whatever it says. Therefore, Bhagavan says, do not take your mind to be real. Mind is, on a relative plane, mind is. But that is not real. Even though you experience it, it need not be real. Even though you see it, it is not real. Even though it is happening all the time, but it need not be real. For example, let us go in a scientific way. Do you see sunrise and sunset every day? Sunrise, set, okay. Sunrise, Swamiji. Not necessarily every day. You get up only after 7. You can't see it. Sunrise and sunset is taking place or not. Do you see that or not? Do you see sunrise? Not coffee or something. Sunrise is real sunrise. Sunset, it's not Sunset Boulevard, sunset. So sunset and sunrise, do you see or not? Answer this. Is it real? Is it real? Do you see it? Do you experience it? Do you enjoy it? You take pictures of it. You go to Hawaii and then take pictures of sunrise and sunset. Or go to Kanyakumari, the end of the land, and then you do prostration. Do you see the sunrise and sunset or not? But is it real? Even science proves to us that even though you see, it is not really taking place. Sun never sets, sun never rises. What is happening then? The place where you are standing, the earth, it is moving. So sun is stationary. Apparently, compared to the earth, sun is stationary. And it does not move. Your earth is moving, and therefore you see a phenomena which is not real. Yet, it doesn't stop you enjoying it. It doesn't stop you admiring it. So a person who has the knowledge that it's not taking place does not mean he will not enjoy that. But he will not give reality to that phenomena. So what is really happening? Earth is moving. Do you see it now? Do you experience, you know what speed it is moving? On its own axis as well as it's going around the sun. What speed it is going? You can't even imagine. It's in millions of miles an hour. But you don't feel it. You're sitting in the same place. So, karma is taking place. Karmani, the movement of the earth, akarma. You don't see it. You don't see action. Akarmani, in non-action, you see action. This is the beauty of this verse. He says, Sabuddhiman. He is a real thinker. So, this example I gave just to make you realize that what we see is not real. In one of the, I think, What the Bleep Do We Know? You saw that movie? In that movie, as well as many other books which I have read, it is said that when you really see a flower, when you see a flower like this, is it real flower? Okay. So, when you see a flower, the thought of a flower takes place in your mind and you experience the thought, like flower. Now they have analyzed the brain and what are the waves that are taking place when a person looks at a flower. Now they ask the same person to close the eyes and imagine that he is seeing a flower. In his mind, just imagine. The thought waves that are taking place in the brain was exactly the same. When you just imagine yourself seeing a flower. So therefore, as far as the brain is concerned, whether the signal is coming from the eyes which reports that there is a flower or a memory of a flower which is sending a signal is one and the same. This is scientifically proven for everyone. So as far as the brain is concerned, whether you are really seeing a flower or you are imagining the flower, the reaction is the same. That is why when we are dreaming, we do react inside. When you have a fearful situation, you sweat. Your BP goes up. No, doesn't happen? It happens. These are all called psychosomatic. One lady was, invited to a party. She hated cauliflower. She just can't stand a cauliflower. So once when she was invited to a party, and that lady, her friend, who was well aware that she doesn't like cauliflower, and they had a party, and then in the party there was a particular dish, it was so tasty, and then this lady had a 2 plate full of that, enjoyed that. So then after enjoying that, she asked on another lady, this is so good, give me a recipe of that. The basic ingredient is cauliflower. The moment she heard that it is made of cauliflower, she got so agitated, so disturbed, and she vomited the entire thing there itself. She went unconscious. She was taken to the hospital, and then all those things, given IV, etc. So then this hosting lady, she was very disturbed. She went to the hospital, and she was standing there. When she opened the eyes, she got so angry. Said, "You know that I am allergic to this cauliflower, and you prepared that, knowing very well that I don't like it, and you made me eat also, and you wanted to take a revenge or what?" And shouting again, she became unconscious. So then after some time again, she opened her eyes. "So, you are still here? Go away from my face." So that lady said, "Who told you that it was made of cauliflower? Not even a single cauliflower was there in that." So now that lady's reaction was completely psychosomatic. Meaning there was no reality at all, but she had imagined that it is so, and therefore all the reactions that took place are not really because of cauliflower. Even if she is allergic to that, it is her thinking that it is that I do not want. So therefore, most of our reactions to the world are not because of the reality that is in front of you, but the reality that we give in our mind. If you understand this, just like one example I gave you where the sun is not really rising or setting, still we see it so, doesn't stop you experiencing it. Similarly, another thing negatively, when a thing is not there, you start seeing it. In both the cases, when you give reality to your mind, whatever it projects, your reactions in the world will take place, even though it is not true. This is the cause for most of our troubles in our life. We imagine. So therefore, Sri Krishna says here in this particular verse that even though your physical body is doing all the functions, though your mind is thinking, your intellect is thinking, all those things are happening, in the activities of the body, mind and intellect, behind the activities of all these, there is one presence which does not participate in anything. And that Atman is Akarta. He is not a doer at all. He is only a witness. He is only an observer. But at the same time, it is not only an observer and witness, it is in whose presence alone body, mind and intellect can function. In his absence, they will collapse. Gurudev used to say, when he is there, you are a Shiva. When he is not there, you are a Shava. You are a dead matter. So, his presence make the body, mind, intellect function, but his presence does not influence them to function. You see? Yasya sannidhi matrena, in whose presence alone, but not he influences neither the body to act, nor the mind to act, nor the intellect to do anything. So, in the midst of these activities that are going on, recognize the still presence of the self. That is one thing. Okay? And so, whenever you are doing any activity, while the body is doing things and the mind is doing things, your attention should be on the still presence of the self, which are because of whom or in whose presence all these functions are taking place. Become aware of that. That is called meditation. So it is difficult when the body is very actively functioning, or the mind is actively feeling emotions, or the intellect is doing the thinking, to see the actionless self. Therefore, reduce the activities of the body, mind and intellect, come to the bare minimum, and then pay your attention to the actionless self. And holding on to the actionless self, engage in the world, you will see that in spite of activities going on, your presence is still. Within you, there is a still presence of the self. Become aware of that. Yesterday also I said, aware of the awareness. Become aware of that still presence. So this is called karmani akarma yapashyed. Yaha, he who pashyed sees, karmani in action, akarma, actionless self. Second thing is that when you are sitting for meditation where you are not doing anything at all, sitting quietly under a tree, sitting in a solitude, and where you are not doing anything. When you are quietly sitting and where the mind has become also quiet and the intellect is also not thinking about anything, at that time there is one fellow who will come up saying that I am quiet. That is called the ego. So in the non-action of the senses, etc., one fellow is active, that is ego. That also you should remember. I am quiet. I am peaceful. Hope everybody knows that I am meditating. And some people write in the t-shirt, I am meditating. So this ego will come there and he is very active. Be aware, therefore, akarmanicha karma. In the non-action of BMI, there is actively present is the ego. You should remember that also. One boy, he was learning meditation from a teacher. Then he went to, his teacher said, go and meditate. So he went there, sat under a tree, and he sat down quietly. Now I am going to meditate. Whatever happens outside, I am not going to pay attention. Sat down quietly. Few minutes passed by. So he said, I am not going to open my eyes or hear nothing, and I am not going to pay attention to anything else. This is what my teacher has said. So he sat down. After some time, there was a cling, 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 cling sound came. Oh, Ramba, Urvashi, Menakas are all coming down from the heavens to disturb me. I know, my teacher has told me in the Puranas such a things happen. So I think they are coming now to disturb me. I am not going to open my eyes. Let them do whatever they want. They may dance, they may sing, do anything. I don't care. So the sound became very close to them. Then he found a soft touch. Ooh, they are trying to touch me. I think with some flowers or something. They are trying to distract my attention. No, I am not going to open my eyes. Then he felt a kind of a slimy touch, like water. They are sprinkling some amrutam on my face. See, this is what happened to Vishwamitra also. I am not going to, to fall into their hands. Never. Then he smelt a very terrible smell, foul smell. Menaka and all, they should be wearing good perfume. Opened the eyes, one buffalo was licking him with a bell on that neck. He jumped out of the whole place, ran to his guru. Hey, guru! So guru said, what happened? I was sitting under a tree and a buffalo came to lick me. So you said that Ramba, Urvashi, Menaka, these people come and disturb you in meditation, but they didn't come, one buffalo came. They said, for Vishwamitra, Ramba, Urvashi is necessary. For you, local buffalo will do. There's no need for anybody else. So when you sit for meditation, don't expect anything. I'm telling you. Some people say, I saw red, green and yellow light. I tell them, you are traveling too much in the traffic. No light. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I feel like lifting myself and moving. That's called froggy meditation. Don't expect anyone. If you sit in meditation expecting something, your mind is occupied only in that expectation. And that means you are giving reality to your mind and the thoughts, which means the whole purpose of meditation is lost. And even as the mind becomes quiet and still, do not own that stillness. Do not own that peace or silence. Otherwise, I am peaceful, I am quiet. That is the ego. Ego's nature is identification. It identifies with the body and become whatever individual one is. It becomes identified with the mind, it becomes emotional and agitated. It identifies the intellect, it becomes arrogant. So ego, that is why if you go to any Hindu temple, traditional temple, if you see the Lord's form, there will be another one around him, it's called Prabhavali. If you go to any temple, you see that, Prabhavali. What do you call that? Ancient temples, Prabhavali. And just above the face of the Lord, you will see a terrible looking demonic face on the Prabhavali. I don't know whether you noticed or not. Usually when you go to look at the Lord, you don't look at anything else. But on the top you will see, mouth open, the eyes are there, and then jwala coming out. That is the representative of your ego. Where the Lord is, there the ego is also. If your attention is not on the Lord, you will see the ego. So when you sit for meditation, your intention is to disidentify with everything else, except that presence of the still presence of the self or the Lord. Anything else you pay attention, ego will come there. So akarmani karma. In the non-action of the body, mind, etc., there is an active ego that is sitting there. So, a person who sees both is called Buddhiman. That is, in action, he sees inaction. Meaning, in the action of body, mind, intellect, he sees the inactive, meaning actionless self present. In the actionless state of meditation, where the body, mind, intellect have become quietened, you see the active presence of the ego. He who is able to understand the nature of these two is called Buddhiman. He is considered as a man of wisdom. Sabuddhiman manusheshu sayuktaha. He is integrated, Krishna karma krit, even though he is engaging in all activities. So Bhagavan says, you need not stop action to know the self. In the midst of action, you can understand the actionless presence. Of course, one has to pay attention in the meditation so that it is easy. Our Gurudev used to give another example. One day, in a small village, a person who is a milkman, one who is having a farm, and in those days, he used to milk the cows and put it in some carrier, and then he will put it in a bike or a cycle or motorcycle. He will go all the way to the village, many big village, and go and sell the milk and buy some things for the cows, etc. And late evening he will return. This is his routine. Very, very hard-working person. One day when he was taking early in the morning around 6 o'clock, he took the milk and he was riding his way to the market. He saw a person sitting next to the lake pond in that end of the village and throwing a stone onto that pond. So he thought to himself, what a waste of time. Early morning sitting there, wasting his time throwing the stone on the pond. Such people should be shot to death. Because he was so proud of his hard work. Went to the market, bought all these things which he wanted, and late in the evening he was coming back. And he saw that fellow sitting in the same place, throwing stone. He said, what a waste of time. Slept. Next day morning he got up, and again he milked the cows and took his bike, and he was riding. Naturally his gaze went to that pond. That fellow was sitting there. He is riding his young man who is wasting his resources, his energy, and unproductive, useless bums. Late in the evening, he finished his work, came back. Same person sitting there throwing stones. He could not tolerate anymore. Went there. Useless fellow, what are you doing? Look at me. Early morning I milk the cow and then take the thing and go to the market and sell that thing and then buy so many things and come back. And hard working, 7 days a week I was working. And you fellows? That fellow did not say anything, smiled. Went. Next day, early morning he picked up the milk, etc. And he was writing, if I see him, I'm going to really thrash him. He didn't see him. Good. See, he listened to me at last finally. When he went to the market after a few days later, and he saw in the marketplace there was a place where they put art gallery. He went there and there was a lot of crowd, and all of them were admiring a particular painting. That was a painting of a beautiful lake, in which the clarity of that, it was looking like a photograph, so much of detail. Even the, ripples of the water, that is also beautifully painted. She was wondering, what a nice imagination. So then he looked, who's the person who painted this? Oh, that person is standing there. Looked at him, lo and behold, it was that man whom he shouted at. He went to him and said, you did this? Yes. What, such a wonderful thing. How did you do that? He said, You asked me that you told me that I'm a unproductive, useless fellow. When I was sitting and throwing the stones, in your perception, I was not doing anything. But there is a very subtle thing that was going on in my mind, how to capture the whole thing in a canvas. So I have to wait 2 days to really capture that whole thing. So in an apparently actionless presence, there is a great activity that is going on. So just to show the difference, one should not conclude merely by looking at a person that he is unproductive. What is going on within his head, nobody knows. So actionlessness does not mean that within him there is nothing going on. Or a person is sitting quietly doing nothing, does not mean he is not thinking about anything. And the same way, one person is very active does not mean his mind is not still. In the midst of action, the mind can be still. In the actionlessness, that mind can be agitated also. As earlier in another chapter, 3rd chapter, Bhagavan Krishna says that Sarvendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudatma mityasarasya uchate. A person may be sitting quietly under a tree as though he is a meditator, but his mind may be continuously running behind sense objects. Such a person is called a hypocrite. So do not therefore misconstrue, just looking at a person who is not doing does not mean his mind is pure, not necessary. Or a person who is actively engaging, don't consider him as extrovert. So in the midst of action, the mind, when it is tuned to that actionless self, or when the actionlessness is there in the physical body, etc., the mind is aware of the active ego. Such a person is a buddhiman. Understand is the Arjuna. Therefore, to be in tune with the self does not mean you should stop acting. You should only recognize the presence of the actionless self. Pay attention to that. So this is the beauty of this verse. He is considered as the wise. Now, Arjuna would ask this question. To be in tune with the self, what are the psychological adjustments I have to do? I understand, theoretically, there is an actionless self. There is a beautiful presence of Atma in me. That I understand. But to reach that, or the tune to that self, what are the psychological adjustment which one has to do? Like for example, when you want to listen to music, how you fine tune your radio so that exactly at that point you get the clarity. In the same way, what are the psychological adjustments one has to do to make sure that one is able to remain attentive to that self? So that is said in the verse number 14. We read that Shraddhavan lapate jnanam tatparas samyatendriyah jnanam labdva param shantim achirena gacchati. First and foremost thing for you to gain that vision of the self is that you should have faith in what is said. If one does not have faith in what one does not see, he will fail to see. Because science says what? Seeing is believing. Right? Everything should be experimented. If I see, I believe. Vedanta says, if you believe, you see. Gurudev has given a beautiful definition. Faith is a belief in that which you don't see. The result of which is you see what you believe in. Faith is a belief in that which you do not see. The result is you see what you believe in. Even when you go to a professional school, let us say you are learning mathematics. So that person, a professor, starts putting the formulas first. He says this is a formula for this particular problem. And then he will start explaining how the formula is and how it is to be applied. And once you are convinced about certain aspects of a particular theorem, then you are convinced that rest of the things also equally applicable. In the field of science also, they believe in that which they don't see. And then only they start working towards that. How do they discover things which they don't see? They believe in certain things and proceed from there. If you do not believe, you will not gain. This belief need not be blind. So therefore, there is a blind belief and what is called faith. Blind belief is that you believe and never experiment it. Whereas faith is where you believe and start experimenting it. So Gurudev used to say, do not blindly believe anything, but do not stop believing. If you believe and start working on what you believe, that is the strength which finally ends in faith. If you start with, I don't believe anybody, then where do you go? So, therefore, Shraddha, faith. Faith leads you to Jnanam. Shraddhavan labate Jnanam. He who has faith gains knowledge. See, because simple theory is, knowledge is about that which you don't know. Right? What is knowledge? Knowing about that you don't know. So you have to accept that I don't know. I know. Then you will never learn. So that's why in one place where they were teaching tabla, there was a board. It says, for the beginner, for the learner, $50 a week. For those who know already, $100. Because I have to make you unlearn first. Then I have to teach you what is the right thing. So you can gain knowledge only when you accept you don't know. Having accepted you don't know, where do you start? I want to know. Where you want to know, then you go to a person who knows. And you must believe that he knows. Is it not that there is a belief? I don't think he knows. Then how will you learn? Accept your ignorance. Increase your inquisitiveness. Go to a person who knows. Believe that he knows. Then only he will start receiving it. First of all, I don't accept, I don't know. Then finish. The journey will never begin. And even if I accept that I don't know, I know I do not have any seeking for it. I don't have the inquisitiveness. Then also you don't learn. And even if I have inquisitiveness and I do not go to a person who knows, then also I don't get. So even if I go to a person who knows, but I don't believe that he knows, then, it is said that when Buddha was asked this question, is there God? He kept quiet. He didn't say anything. There are 4 sets of people who went to him and asked, is there God? He didn't say. The first set of people who got no answer from him, they understood he doesn't know. So they went away. He doesn't know. What is the point in going to a person who doesn't know? Because he's not answering our questions. So they thought he doesn't know. Second set of people then went and asked, is there God? He didn't say anything. So they said, there is no God. If there is God, you should say yes, He didn't say yes, therefore there is no God. Then what am I looking for? They went away. Third set of people. Is there God? He didn't answer. So they said, he doesn't want to teach. What is the point in going to a person who doesn't want to teach? So they went away. The 4th set of people. Is there God? He didn't say anything. So we are not qualified. Because therefore we need to become qualified. Therefore they stayed back. To become eligible, to become qualified to learn, Buddha accepted these people. Unless you you accept that you do not know, you will not start the journey. So that is Shraddha. Shraddha is believing in that which you do not see. The result is you start seeing what you believe in. So believing is seeing according to Vedanta. Shraddhavan labate jnanam. Next is, jnanam is what? It is to show that which is beyond you. Tatparaha. Tatpara means that which is greater than you. That which is not presently your experience. But you want to experience it. Therefore, you must keep that in an elevated level. That's why we all say, oh God. Where exactly? If you look for it, you will not find. You say God, you show the hand above, not that He is physically above, but you elevate your mind to receive or experience Him. So in any religious, performance or worship, God is kept as high. Not in the physical nature, but He is higher than me in terms of power, knowledge, experience, in everything. So tat paraha. Understand that you are seeking is greater than you. When you are seeking it greater than you, you should have a discipline for yourself. That's called sanyata indriyaha, discipline of the senses. So 3 things: faith, considering or respecting that as higher than you, and following the discipline of the senses for reaching that. If you have these 3, jnanam labdva, what is the result of that jnanam? Param shanti, a great, infinite, eternal peace is yours. Achirena digacchati, within no time he gets that. So the peace is a result of the knowledge. Knowledge is a result of faith. Therefore, faith he who has, he finally reaches there. So therefore, these are the psychological adjustments you have to make. Develop the faith, consider the goal as higher than you, and quieten the senses. If you can do that, psychological adjustment, you will surely get that. The result of which is peace. So tomorrow is the last session. I told you, I'm not finishing it. Don't expect me to finish, 36 verses tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. Maybe 20 maximum. So, we'll see sometime later when I come back. And meanwhile, you will be offering Guru Dakshina tomorrow. And you will be given an envelope. You have to fill your name and full inside also. It's called filling the name and filling it with something else. Maybe patram, pushpam, phalam, whatever it is. That's called fulfilling experience. Because Bhagavan said, give anything. Patram means check. Pushpam, phalam. Don't put water inside. So your offering is not for me, it is for the tradition of teachers. Guru Parampara, GPS system, Guru Parampara system. So you give it to the whole this tradition of teachers, because of whom I benefited, and because of us others benefit. So that supporting that tradition of teachers is what is called Guru Dakshina. It's not a fee you pay for the class or anything. So understand that it's a show of gratitude for the knowledge we have learned from the masters. So that's the Guru Dakshina thing that we'll do tomorrow at the end. So we'll meet again tomorrow at 7:30. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkhabad Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha.